edges where the silk threads poke out from the stitch. To get a beautiful edge on scarves, press under about 1/2 inch of the silk to the wrong side and serge along the folded edge. Then trim off the excess close to the rolled hem. Regular upkeep on your serger keeps it running smoothly and out of the repair shop. Keep your machine lint-free by cleaning it with a large cosmetic brush or canned air. Put a drop of oil on any parts that move against each other. Check the looper, needle plate, and foot for any nicks and buff them out with a fine emery sandpaper. A cover stitch is 2 to 3 rows of stitching on one side of the fabric and a serge stitch on the other. It's the industry standard for hemming knits. Even though cover stitch machines are usually sold beside sergers, they are more like a sewing machine because they don't cut fabric. Top-of-the-line sergers offer a cover stitch feature which is wonderful for the crafter or home deck sewer. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to make the change from a serger to a cover stitch. If you are a garment sewer, you might find it better to own 2 separate machines, the serger and a separate cover stitch. That way you can move from one machine to another without having to make the changeover. The cover stitch machine has 3 basic hemming stitches. It's a matter of personal choice based on what you like in ready-to-wear. The triple cover stitch has 3 rows of stitching on the top. The wide cover stitch has 2 rows of stitching about 1/4 inch apart, and the narrow cover stitch has 2 rows of cover stitching about 1/8 inch apart. They all work the same way, it's just a matter of taste. There's also a chain stitch, which is achieved by using just one needle. This could be useful for basting since you can pull one thread and the whole stitching line comes out. Using a decorative thread in the looper can make a pretty decorative chain stitch. These simple steps ensure that your stitches will form properly. When starting to cover stitch from rethreading, the looper thread remains under the needle plate and the needle threads should be over the top of the foot and off to the left side. Raise the needles and presser foot and slide the fabric under the needles so they start in the fabric. Lower the presser foot, take a couple of stitches and cut the needle threads. When you come to the end of the fabric, chain off just enough to be able to get the scissors in to cut the thread. To start the next seam, lift the toe of the presser foot and put the fabric close to the needles. Turn the garment inside out so that when you stitch, it comes out in front of you rather than going around the machine. Grab the needle threads below the eye and pull off to the left over the foot. Slide the fabric under the foot and position the needles. Use the previous steps to stitch and cut the needle threads. When the stitching is a couple of inches from where it started, align the raised marks on the toe of the presser foot with the stitches and stitch over at least 1 inch. Lower the needles all the way down into the stitch. Then turn the hand wheel backwards to bring the needles into the top position. This releases the needle thread from the lower looper. Raise the presser foot, grab the threads, and gently pull them to the left. Cut the threads, leaving a 6-inch tail. Pull the needle threads to the back and tie an overhand knot. A dab of fray check helps hold the knot. The cover stitch has differential feed just like a serger, making it perfect for knits. Increase the differential feed setting to a higher number to reduce the stretch for a knit fabric. The cover stitch can't make a sharp corner without manipulation from a needle and thread. Stitch to the corner and lower the needles into the fabric. Turn the hand wheel backwards to release the looper. Turn the fabric and lower the needles into the stitch. You will need to use a needle and thread to pull the corner in place. An option would be to have a slightly rounded corner. Stitch to within a couple stitches of the corner and lower the needle so the tip is just piercing the fabric. Raise the presser foot and turn the fabric slightly. Repeat until the corner has been turned. Fold under one side of the seam allowance and press. Overlap the folded side over the flat side and pin or glue it in place. Cover stitch close to the fold. Now that you have all these helpful serger tips at your disposal, just remember, like any new technique, they take practice. If you're having trouble with a particular stitch or technique, try it 6 times. Usually by then, you'll have it mastered. If you're still having trouble, contact the store where you purchased the serger and ask for help. There are also in-depth articles in the Threads archives and a number of helpful books and classes. Most of all, have fun with your sewing and serging and create wonderful things.